Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. One of the better known Civil War stories is the capture of Union artillery by the 226 strong Corps of Cadets from the Virginia Military Institute at the Battle of New Market on May 15th, 1864. So the story goes the heroic charge by the young boys taking a cannon and saving the day. Far less remembered is that the artillery belonged to the 30th New York Independent Battery, commanded by Captain Alfred August Von Kleiser. He's seated here on the left with three of his comrades. They posed for this group portrait in a photo gallery in Frederick, Maryland. The first lieutenant standing on the right is Conrad Carolyn, who also served in the 30th with von Kleiser. The other two men standing in the upper left and seated in the lower right, well, they're currently unidentified. On the back of this image, von Kleiser inscribed his name and a date, July 28, 1863. It's about a year before the Battle of New Market. Von Kleiser began his life in his homeland at Baden-Württemberg in southwest Germany. According to one source, he was the grandson of a German knight. Von Kleiser left his native country, as many folks from that part of the world did at some point before the Civil War began. In his adopted homeland, he managed to assimilate and acclimate quite nicely. He became simply known as Von, that was his nickname, and he enjoyed a reputation as an agreeable and genial young man. Then came the summer of 1861. After the war began, 19-year-old von Kleiser, or Von, joined the Army as a second lieutenant and commander of Battery B of the 1st Battalion New York Volunteer Light Artillery. It was also known as Brickel's German Light Artillery for its commander, Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Brickel. And as you students of the Civil War know, there were a large number of German units, cavalry, infantry, and artillery around the Union, representative of the large numbers of immigrants that came from that part of Europe before the war. In March of 1863, just a few months before von Kleiser posed for this portrait, Brickel's batteries were reorganized as independent units. So that's how von Kleiser got his independent command. And then, of course, comes New Market. Von Kleiser's 150-man battery of 6 Napoleons found itself in the middle of heavy fighting. According to one report, von Kleiser's guns opened a murderous fire upon the enemy's breastworks and inflicted serious damage. Now, according to many reports, eyewitness accounts, one gun became disabled and it had to be abandoned. Von Kleiser and the rest of his command relocated, 5 guns left, to a new position in the vicinity of the Bushong House. Here, the battle rage and Union forces suffered severely. Among the losses was a second gun from von Kleiser's battery, which had been disabled by enemy artillery and could not be moved because the horses had all been shot down or killed by fragments of the rebel artillery. That second abandoned Napoleon, it sat there. Horses were dead. The men were gone, either killed or taken away. That Napoleon, that gun sat there in the direct path of the advancing VMI cadets who captured it. They took the cannon without a fight. Now, you may be wondering, in the beginning of this video, I told you the story about how the VMI cadets came in and with gallantry, they took the cannon. Well, it's not exactly how it happened. And we know this because of research by William C. Davis, Jack Davis, in the August 1996 issue of the Civil War Times. Jack tells how the story twisted from an abandoned gun to a glorious account, that one I told you about of gallantry in the face of death by the VMI boys. Davis noted in his 1996 Civil War Times story, quote, within days, newspaper accounts in the South would have the boys engaged in bitter hand-to-hand fighting, of which there was virtually none on that part of the battlefield, and certainly not by the cadets. Not one contemporary account mentioned that the gun had been left behind, and only by chance in their line of march, end quote. As time passed, the story grew. According to Davis, quote, by the 1880s, the impression was firmly planted that the VMI cadets had held a vital place in the Confederate line under intense hand-to-hand fighting, and in surging forward, virtually alone, had captured a whole battery and single-handedly given the South a victory, end quote. I did a little bit of my own research just to check out Davis's account, and I found, in support of his research, the October 17th, 1895 issue of the Atlanta Constitution. It had this to say about the VMI cadets in New Market, quote, the charge of those boys of Von Kleiser's battery the afternoon of that fight was on the most daring and intrepid pieces of work ever known on a battlefield, end quote. Today, you can still find versions of the story that inflate the accomplishment of the cadets. Now, you may wonder what became of Von Kleiser. About a month after the Battle of New Market, he was captured. He fell into enemy hands after a skirmish at Buford's Gap, Virginia, and landed in prison camps in Macon, Georgia, and Columbia, South Carolina. He escaped from Columbia's Camp Sorghum in November 1864, but was soon recaptured and remained a prisoner of war until receiving a parole in March 1865. The following year, back home, he married Elizabeth Huspil in Berkeley, West Virginia. It's about 75 miles north of the New Market battlefield. How they met is not known, but the location and timing suggests that they first became acquainted during the war, not too far from that battlefield. The Von Kleiser started a family that grew to include 3 daughters and a son. Von Kleiser worked for the Internal Revenue Service to support his family until consumption cut his life short at age 40 in 1884. So thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.